Seattle Mariners. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Eddie B TV. I am, of course, Eddie B. Nice to see y'all. And we are back at you again with another reaction video. And here on Random Sunday, we're going to close out the day with part 3 of the history of the Seattle Mariners today. Now, any of y'all who have tuned into the first 2 parts, which hasn't been many, no, I'm just playing, I'm not mad about that. Or am I? Yeah, but for those of you who have tuned into the first 2 parts, you know, we have gotten into how the Mariners started as the Seattle Pilots. 1 year of them got shipped to Milwaukee to become the Brewers. How politics got involved, how arson was involved, you know, and complaining was involved and all kinds of other stuff, you know. And of course we got into some of the Mariners greats, as far as greats go for an era where we weren't doing much. Got into King Griffey Jr., Alvin Davis, you know what I mean? Got into the weirdness of Rick Honeycutt, you know, and Maury Wills and all of that. And at the end of part 2, we got into the Mariners making it to the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history in 1995. And yeah, they're gonna close it out, and I imagine this has to do with the rest of the 95 playoffs, because that's where it cut off at part 2. And I've been waiting to get to this, so we're gonna get into it. And the title of this one, from Secret Base, formerly SB Nation, and Dorktown, and I'm guessing that's just a production company of some kind. I don't know exactly. I'm gonna have to look that up so I don't look foolish when I'm trying to describe what I'm seeing. But yeah, the title of this one is called The Battle for Seattle. And I remember vaguely a little bit, because I was only 10 years old at the time, so I wasn't paying attention to anything political or anything on the news, really. But it was a big thing going on here in Seattle. You know, the Mariners were presumably gonna get shipped out of town to Tampa Bay, or maybe even somewhere else like Vancouver if they couldn't get a new stadium, right? And of course, the fact that they never made the playoffs was a big part of them possibly moving. Hadn't had any success, you know, but now they got these great collection of players and a new attitude, new manager, and Sweet Lou Pinella, shout out to you. And yeah, we're gonna see what's going on here for the 95 playoffs here. And of course, on the last video, they beat the California Angels 9-1 on a complete game from Randy Johnson. And they went up against former Mariner who was traded for Randy Johnson and Mark Langston. And it was a trippy game, you know. They hit up the first base line from Luis Sojo, scoring everybody. And the craziness in the kingdom, man, it was just off the hook, man. So, all right, no more yakking. Let's go ahead and get into this one, like I said. From Secret Base, formerly SB Nation, and Dorktown, come the Battle for Seattle, the history of the Seattle Mariners. And if you like this reaction, please like, comment, and subscribe to your boy. Keep everything going. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into this one. This one is slightly shorter than the first 2, only 24 minutes. So hopefully y'all ride with me on this one, and hopefully you like the stories that are in this, because I've liked them so far. And like I said, there was some things about the Mariners in the first 2 parts that I already knew, and a couple of things that I didn't. So hopefully there might be something new about this year that I didn't know about, and hopefully it's just as amusing to you guys as it is to me. So let's get into it. The Battle for Seattle, the history of the Seattle Mariners, from Secret Base, formerly SB Nation. All right, we're gonna get into it here, right here on ALDS TV on Random Sunday. Hope you enjoy. Edgar. Dramatic music, man.
Management has made it clear that if there's no stadium deal by the end of the month, they're selling, which virtually guarantees moving. Washington Governor Mike Lowry begins to arrange a last-ditch effort to fund a new park, but as it stands, it's kind of a long shot. For one, politicians are generally hesitant to counteract a public vote. For another, we're less than 1 year removed from the Republican Revolution of 1994. Washington state served as ground zero, as the spending-averse GOP saw more House victories here than in anywhere else in the country. The on-field performance of the Mariners seems to be the only variable left. If they squeak into the playoffs only to be immediately snuffed out, is that enough to move the needle? Probably not. This team, which had never seriously contended in their entire history until about a month ago, has to win something. 5 games, first to 3 takes it. And again, this could not have been written any better. To this point in history, the New York Yankees had been to the World Series 33 times and won 22 of them. They were everything the Mariners were not. The Yankees played in a storied stadium that lasted nearly a century. The Mariners played in a concrete dome built on the cheap that started falling apart in 20 years' time. The Yankees were a mainstay of American culture. The Mariners had to fight for the privilege of existing. Yankees got married to Marilyn Monroe and hung out with the Rat Pack. Mariners made toilet jello and threw up because it was funny. In recent times, the Yankees had emerged like locusts, surfacing to contend every 10 or 15 years. In '94, the strike may have been the only thing keeping them from another World Series, as they had the best record in the American League.
Wow.
They decided that, once again, it was their time. The Yankees were an archenemy to many, but few, if any, shared the animosity held by Ken Griffey Jr. The 1983 incident wasn't a simple clubhouse misunderstanding. The Griffey family had been disrespected, and for Jr., a family man who famously preferred spending time with his wife and kids to living the celebrity lifestyle, it was not a forgettable offense. In Ken Sr.'s autobiography, Big Red, he wrote that Jr. carried this grudge against the Yankees throughout his entire career, adding that he played his best games against them. He was right. In fact, despite all the premier pitching the Yankees threw at Jr. over the years, he hit better against them than any other team. 7 years into his career, baseball's biggest superstar is finally in the playoffs.
The kid.
Here is his opportunity to save the future of his team and exact revenge on another.
Let's get it done, huh?
Junior and the Mariners entered the first ever ALDS game fighting an uphill battle. For starters, after punching their playoff ticket with that win over the Angels, they didn't get into New York, their third time zone in 3 days, until after 4 in the morning. On top of that, they were without the services of their superstar ace at the beginning of the series, thanks to Johnson's heroics the day before to even get him here. But Buck Showalter's Yankees had the luxury of being able to send their top pitcher to the mound on full rest, mid-season trade acquisition and reigning AL Cy Young winner David Cone. Cone's been red hot, having allowed just 4 runs across his final 25 innings of the regular season, and he got an early lead with a 2-run Wade Boggs homer. But, as John mentioned, having a star pitcher on the mound didn't matter when it came to Griffey. No matter how good any pitcher was, if he was wearing the pinstripes, Junior was going to dole out the punishment. And sure enough, to lead off the next inning, he cut the deficit in half with a single gorgeous swing of the bat, sending a Cone split finger to the upper deck. Later on, trailing by 2 with a man on, Griffey again took a Cone splitter deep to right that tied the score at 4.
Damn, that swing.
Home run! But alas, the Yanks pulled away with a late inning onslaught against M's reliever Bobby Ayala and took Game 1 by a score of 9-6. For Game 2, Piniella gave the ball to Andy Benes in an all-Andy pitching duel against 23-year-old Yankee rookie Andy Pettitte, making the first start of his MLB record 44 career postseason starts. And they took a 3rd-inning lead when left fielder Vince Coleman, a man who was an all-time great when it came to swiping bases, but had come into this game with just 27 homers through his first 11 big league regular seasons, sent a 3-2 fastball soaring the opposite way that New York right fielder Paul O'Neill could only watch sail over the fence to give Seattle the early lead. They trailed for the first time when Ruben Sierra and Don Mattingly led off the bottom of the 6th inning with back-to-back dingers. And even though they retook the lead on a 7th inning Griffey sac fly, O'Neill hit a blast of his own to tie it back up, necessitating extra innings to decide this one.
This series was crazy, man.
And a couple minutes after Wednesday became Thursday, That sure appeared to be the Mariners when Griffey, facing New York closer John Wetland, against whom Junior's 6 weeks removed from hitting a walk-off homer, launched this 12th-inning fastball into the night.
He drills it deep to right field, towards the gap, 385, my goodbye! Home run, he has done it again!
Griffey had put Seattle on the brink of tying the series at a game apiece, further validating the enormous praise lobbed his way by Mr. October himself, Reggie Jackson. But in the Yankees' last chance at the dish, Wade Boggs drew a walk to reach base before Jorge Posada pinch ran for him. It was Posada's maiden voyage on an MLB base path, and he was representing the tying run in extra innings of a playoff game. Pinella summoned starting pitcher Tim Belcher out of the pen, who promptly allowed a 2-out Ruben Sierra double that brought Posada home to stay alive. After failing to score in the next 3 innings against Mariano Rivera, Belcher capped what had now broken the 24-hour-old record for longest playoff game in MLB history by allowing a 15th inning walk-off homer to Yankee catcher Jim Leyritz.
It could be! Back in the wall! Goodbye! Home run! The Yankees win!
Giving the Yankees a commanding 2-0 series lead and compelling the M's to win 3 in a row as the series shifted to the Kingdome.
I was depressed. 10 years old, I thought we were out.
The morning of Game 3, an update from Governor Lowry hits the papers, and it's not good. Negotiations still aren't going anywhere. Republicans are maintaining a hard line, no taxes for a new park. And if the Mariners get unceremoniously swept out of the playoffs, well, that line is probably all the easier to hold. Baseball isn't like other sports. One player can't carry his team to greatness. The greatest hitter can bat every 9 times, and that's it. It's why, in Junior's first few great seasons, the Mariners were mediocre at best. It's why, in his historically great 93 and 94 seasons, you could look at their win-loss record and never even know he was there. And it's why Game 3, on October 6th, 1995, could very well be the last game the Seattle Mariners ever play.
It was almost a reality, man. Almost.
Coming off 2 games in the Bronx with a rabid Yankee fan base that was constantly throwing garbage on the field and hurling objects at Mariner players, Seattle was very much looking forward to returning to the Kingdome. And at least in Game 3, with their backs completely against the wall in their first ever home playoff game, they got to climb on the giant shoulders of Randy Johnson, who in '95 we know was seemingly indestructible, untouchable, and automatic all year. For the first 3 no-hit innings, it was more of the same. Until Bernie Williams' crushing homer in the 4th put the Yanks up, even with the M's deity on the mound. It looked even more grim with Johnson's New York counterpart, another recent AL Cy Young winner in Jack McDowell, in an absolute groove, having faced the minimum 12 batters through 4 innings. However, that mistake to Williams was Johnson's only real blip, with Seattle taking the lead back on a 2-run bomb in the 5th off the bat of Tino Martinez.
Tino!
And a monster 6th inning returned the baseball world to the normalcy of being able to ride a brilliant gem from the big unit when they needed it the very most to a huge win. For the second time that week, the entire season and maybe the entire existence of the franchise came down to Randy Johnson's left arm on 3 days rest. For the second time that week, even without his best stuff, Randy Johnson delivered. Season still alive.
The big unit.
But to keep the plug from being pulled, Seattle would have to win another 2 games, starting mere mortals at pitcher. And Game 4 starter Chris Bosio wasted 0 time showing just how mortal he was. 3 batters into the game, 3 Yankees were aboard. They all eventually scored,
I'll
putting
get
the
into
Mariners
this.
way behind the 8-ball just minutes in. Another O'Neill homer a couple innings later buried the Mariners into a dreadful 5-run hole. Hope was just about gone. And it may well have been completely gone if not for the presence of one Edgar Martinez.
Edgar.
Their third baseman turned designated hitter, who was coming off a couple injury-plagued seasons, but in 1995 stayed healthy and had been MLB's top batter, even though he was widely underappreciated.
Outside of Seattle, Edgar never got the enormous amount of credit he deserved, largely because he spent most of his career as a designated hitter. Well, this is the guy we were ignoring. If you want to know how good a hitter is and you only want to look at one number, OPS, or on-base plus slugging, is the number for you. In '95, Edgar's OPS surpassed 1,100, a mark that even the best hitters rarely approach in a full season. Up here is a jumble of seasons owned by the likes of Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Mickey Mantle. In '94, 3 guys reached the mark, but because of the strike, they only had to maintain the number for 2/3 of a normal season. Edgar's up here playing damn near a full season. From the early 60s up until this season, his only neighbor is Barry Bonds. The arc of Edgar's career is as fascinating as its apex. It was the precise opposite of Griffey's. Ironically, when scouts came to watch Edgar in Puerto Rico, they liked his fielding, but they saw him as a weak hitter without much potential. At age 20, Junior was already an all-star with 2 seasons under his belt. At the same age, Edgar was working days at a furniture store, then working nights at a factory. As a last-ditch effort, he dragged himself to a Mariners tryout after a grueling night shift, played on fumes, and somehow managed to show enough flash to earn an offer from the team. He didn't even play his first major league game until age 24, and didn't play his first full season until age 27, at which age Griffey had already played so much great baseball that he could have retired on the spot and still probably made the Hall of Fame. Edgar was 32 now, and his OPS of 1.109, across his entire career, Junior never did that. It's impossible to overstate just how great this guy was.
And when the next opportunity to hit for Seattle rolled around, they got 2 men on before Edgar strolled to the plate. It was time for this superhero to put on his cape and bring the Kingdome to life with a towering 3-run shot.
Deep to left field, Edgar Martinez, deep! Put it up!
That cut the deficit to 2. They eventually took a 6-5 lead behind a, and forgive me if I'm starting to sound like a broken record, Ken Griffey Jr. home run.
Hit high and deep! Griffey's got it out of here!
In the roller coaster that is Mariner baseball, they allowed the Yanks to pull even heading into the bottom of the 8th, with Edgar due up 4th. The first 3 all reached base, which is a pretty good way to tee up the AL batting champ. A meatball was served right down the middle of the plate by poor John Wetland, and if you make a mistake like that to Martinez, he'll rip your heart out with the grandest of
Bernie
slams.
Williams goes back, and it is. Get out the rye bread and the mustard this time, Grandma. It is a grand salami.
To not only become the first player to ever drive in 7 runs in a playoff game, but also bust the game wide open. Almost not wide open enough though, as Bernie Williams nearly hit a miraculous game-tying homer when the Yankees were down to their last out, only to settle harmlessly into Junior's glove.
I'm gonna talk about
Outside of a compound ankle fracture suffered by their Mariner Moose mascot,
I remember that.
it was a magical evening. Against all odds, the Mariners had tied the series at 2 games apiece to force a winner-take-all Game 5 the following evening. The eyes of the entire country descended upon the Kingdome for this one, the first day with but a single nationally televised game since Joe Carter's World Series winning walk-off about 23 and a half months earlier. Unlike Seattle, New York got to rely on their ace for the do-or-die affair, though even he knew no answers existed for Edgar.
David Cone was good, man. It really was.
The first couple innings were scoreless, thanks in large part due to the bottom half of the second frame when Seattle had a runner in scoring position with none out, then two in scoring position with just one out, only for David Cone to escape the jam by striking out the side. But then in the third, just like Vince Coleman's remarkably unlikely homer in Game 2, 30-year-old Mariners second baseman Joey Cora opened the scoring by going deep for just the 8th time in more than 2,000 career at-bats.
Joey
O'Neill answered the next inning to put the Yankees on top. With the M's trailing by 2 in the bottom of the 6th, a leadoff double by Edgar again gave Seattle a runner in scoring position with none out, and again Cone struck out the side to neutralize the threat. More deja vu for Junior's next time at the plate in the 8th, when his 3rd homer of the series off Cone was also his 5th overall, matching Reggie Jackson's record for the most in any postseason series and pulling the Mariners within 1. As the inning drew on, a completely gassed Cone lost any semblance of control as his pitch count approached 150. He issued a couple walks to help load the bases before yet another freebie to pinch hitter Doug Strange capped Seattle's 2-out rally and tied the game heading into the 9th, where the party was just getting started. The Yankees were on the verge of dealing a death blow when they got 2 on with none out and the top of the order due up against Mariner reliever Norm Charlton. In other words, desperation time.
the sheriff.
And we all know who's risen to the occasion time and time again when it's desperation o'clock.
Brought in Randy, didn't they? I remember this too. Yeah. A big unit.
Less than 48 hours removed from throwing nearly 120 pitches, with over 240 across the previous 6 days, for a very limited appearance, Johnson was somehow available out of the pen. His legend grew when he sat down the heart of the Yankee lineup in order, getting the M's out of that bleak situation unscathed. The bottom half of the 9th was the Mariners' turn to reach the doorstep of victory, knocking Mariano Rivera on the ropes with the series-winning run in scoring position and just 1 out. New York responded by calling on McDowell for his first career relief appearance, and he likewise rose to the challenge to keep the game tied as the Game 3 starters were now dueling in extras to decide the 5th game for all the marbles. And they stayed dueling, with Johnson pitching another inning and striking out the side in a Herculean effort that left every ounce of everything he had on the field.
Oh yeah.
The 10th inning turned into the 11th inning, and what was initially supposed to be a break glass in case of emergency situation to get an out, maybe 2, had now turned into a 3rd inning on the mound. And finally, at this point, the effects of his monstrous workload started to cause some cracks, with this Randy Velarde go-ahead RBI single a brutal punch to the gut, sending the Mariners into the bottom of the 11th, 3 outs away from utter heartbreak and devastation. Joey Cora was set to lead off, and at that point, he'd attempted 36 career bunts with the bases empty. 15 of them resulted in a hit, including one the day before. Now make it 16 out of 37. Tying run aboard.
It's a good average.
Griffey continued his torrid stretch by singling him over to 3rd. Tying run 90 feet away, ALDS winning run aboard. Into the batter's box stepped Edgar Martinez.
A dozen years ago, when he was working the night shift at a General Electric factory in San Juan, Edgar never could have imagined himself in this moment. He doesn't even need a hit to tie the game. With the speedy core at third, any outfield fly should do just fine. And even with one out, they still have Junior on base. For Ken Griffey Jr. to score the run that ends the New York Yankees season, well, that's the type of moment he's been waiting on for 12 years.
Oh yeah, man.
And the opportunity to call a moment of this magnitude is something Dave Niehaus has waited for since the very beginning, nearly 20 years ago. This moment belongs to these three men.
They would love a base hit into the gap, and they could win it with Junior speed to stretch. And the 0-1 pitch on the way to Edgar Martinez. Swung on and lined down the left field line for a base hit. Here comes Joy. Here is Junior to third base. They're going to wave him in. The throw to the plate will be late. The Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship. I don't believe it. It just continues. My, oh my. Edgar Martinez with a double. Ripped down the left field line, and they are going crazy at the Kingdom.
Oh, what a night, man. What a game.
It's so beautifully, obnoxiously fake. The superstar slides into home to beat the bad guy. Fireworks are lit off indoors above a nylon field. The team just played for its life and won. There are two mobs here. One swarms around Edgar, who will spend his entire career in Seattle. This is the hit that will one day push him over the top and get him into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it's popular to consider it as the hit that saved baseball in Seattle. As overdramatic as that might sound, it's probably accurate. In the aftermath, opposing politicians lamented that the public's excitement for the team was putting them over a barrel. A couple weeks later, funds for the stadium were delivered. Edgar's double into left field is likely the reason the Seattle Mariners are here today. Somewhere in the other pile of bodies is Junior, who did it with his legs this time, flying in all the way from first base. Almost no other power hitter of his era would have been able to leg that one out. When he did, he exacted revenge on a team that he'd resented since he was 13 years old, and he helped to save the future of his own team. Junior is barely visible within this tumbleweed of Mariners. On the ABC broadcast, he emerges for just a handful of frames. The images we'll always remember him for, yelling like an idiot in pure disbelief that he's slain two dragons at once. This is a moment that belongs to another world, one where cycles close and stories end, where there are heroes and the heroes win. A moment like this has no business in our world.
That's where it cuts off, huh? Oh man, oh man. That music just gets me. All right. Oh man. Whew. Man, oh man. Boy, does that take me back. That was part 3 of the history of the Seattle Mariners, titled The Battle for Seattle. Man, oh man, that brings up so many memories, man. I mean, I was only 10 years old when this whole season happened, and I swear it's just like watching it, I didn't imagine for the whole regular season being in a position to watch the Mariners in the playoffs to begin with, you know. But when it actually started, you know, happening, you know, we beat California and then we got to play the Yankees, I'm getting pissed off the first 2 games because we lost the first 2 in New York. And then, you know, we had to come home to Seattle for 3 in a row, and we had to win them all, you know. I remember the first playoff game at home, we won it, and I was just so relieved. I was happy. I was like, all right, cool. For a young kid to see this for the first time, he's watching his favorite team, and they got 1 win, first playoff win at home. And that was just a really great feeling. And it was a trippy feeling, because this is what I wanted to get into. I had the opportunity to go to game 4. But the thing is that my mind at the time is that I didn't want to go to that game and then we win and then I won't be able to go to game 5. You know what I mean? Because that's the one that I was really focused on going to, because I knew that in order for us to win it, it would have to go a full 5 games, because that's how the division series works. It's a 5-game series. I had the opportunity to go to game 4. I turned it down. Because I was just hoping that we would be in a position to win it all, you know? So I had this friend of mine growing up. He lived on the next block from me. And out of nowhere, because I'm waiting, this is the day of game 5 actually, because we had just won game 4 with the great Edgar Martinez grand slam. Get out the rye bread and mustard, grandma. And he shows up and he's like, hey, you want to go to a baseball game with me? And I go, what baseball game? I'm watching the Mariners game tonight. And he's like, yeah, that's the one. And I'm like, I think I had a heart attack almost at 10 years old when he said that, because I was like, you want to take me to game 5? Because I had my opportunity to go to game 4, I turned it down. And I'm a little kid. You're probably wondering, you're 10 years old and you turned that down. I'm like, yeah, I was an idiot. I didn't get it. But as it turns out, I could have ended up going to both games, you know, if I would have known that my buddy was going to come by and tell me that he had an extra ticket, and he was going with his dad and his uncle, and they had an extra ticket, and he wanted to take me. So I missed game 4, a great game in Mariners history, where we won our second playoff game in crazy fashion. But instead, I got to go to game 5, man. I was at that game. 10 years old, I didn't know what the deal was. I just knew that I was like really nervous and scared the whole time, because the Kingdom was packed. You know what I mean? Nearly 60,000 people. And that was a large crowd, man, a huge crowd. And I remember my stepdad, Greg, was so pissed at me. He was so mad. And I was mad too, because I wanted to be with him, believe it or not, to see this game. You know, but he told me, hey man, this is a, you know, great chance for you to go to a meaningful game. And, you know, he gave me a hug and said, have fun. And I went. And I swear, man, at 10 years old, I was so pissed off early on, because we were getting the shit kicked out of us early in that game. And it just brings back so many memories, man. But then Edgar came back, you know, he hit a 3-run jack, you know what I mean? And actually, no, that was game 4. But what I'm talking about is that we were just down and we just could not pick ourselves up. You know what I mean? And I was thinking like, man, we need to get back into this. And I remember I started to feel a little bit shaky when the 8th inning came around, because they were thinking about leaving, because if we had left around the time when the game ended, it would have been crazy traffic, and that's what they were thinking about. But then the 8th inning came around and Griffey hit that home run to put it within 1. And then finally that same inning, man, the whole place went nuts when Doug Strange got walked. And, you know, and then we tied the game up, man. And then everybody was just on the edges. I was hearing so much chat, oh my goodness, from everyone around me. And I was just so like, just lit up with so much like nervousness and anxiety, man. And then it went to extras. And of course, when Randy came in, the whole place went nuts. And then, sure enough, he gives up the run. Randy Velarde, I think his name was. Yeah, Randy Velarde drove in the go-ahead run. And then the last half of the 11th inning came, and then all the theatrics that happened, man. And I swear, we were sitting in the upper deck in center field. You know what I mean? We were just like behind everything. It was like probably like the worst seat that you could have for the views that you would want. But I didn't care, man. I was at a Mariners playoff game, and if we won this game, we were gonna win our first playoff series ever. Never mind being there for the first time, that was good enough, you know, but to win it against the Yankees, that was nuts, man. And when we won it, man, the whole place went insane. It was the loudest place I had ever been to. And I still think the loudest game I had ever been to. You know, I've been to some Seahawks games in Quest, CenturyLink / Lumen Field. Too many damn names, but even still, that Kingdom game feels like the loudest, most incredible game I've ever been to, ever. And I've also been to the NFC Championship game against the Carolina Panthers that sent the Seahawks to their first Super Bowl. And that was intense, you know, but still, Seattle Mariners winning, it was crazy, man. It was just such a great game, such a great time, man. I was on top of the world, 10 years old, feeling like I just won the lottery, man. And yeah, that was, really took me back, you know. All right, enough yakking about me, man. That was part 3 of the history of the Seattle Mariners. And the title of that one was called The Battle for Seattle. And boy, did they battle, man. It was such a great series, man. And even the Yankees, even though I can't stand the Yankees, man, I think that was like one of 2 of their legitimate teams that they had that competed for a championship. And because all the other ones I just thought was super teamed up, paying for team nonsense. I just couldn't stand that. But yeah, man, it was such a great series, man, and I was so happy that I was able to be a part of that, man. I got so many memories of being a part of Seattle sports games, but that one right there just rings as top 5 greatest that I've ever been a part of, man. And yeah, man, that one's called The Battle for Seattle, from the history of Seattle Mariners, part 3 documentary. And if you like that reaction, please like, comment, and subscribe to your boy. Keep everything going, like I said. And yeah, that's gonna be all for that one, man. Man, that was an intense watch right there, man. And that was just the 95 playoffs, you know. Obviously, it doesn't have a good ending for that year, and I'm sure they're gonna get to that in part 4. But there's 3 more parts to this, man. And I can't wait to see where they're gonna go with the rest of the Mariners history on this one. So yeah, this is gonna be ADB TV signing off one more again on this one here on Random Sunday, part 3 of the history of Seattle Mariners, man. Gosh, such an intense watch, man. I really love this documentary. It's like, it's not so glamorous and so flashy like, you know, most documentaries about things would be. It's very straightforward, you know what I mean? It's got a lot of graphs and stats and stuff like that, you know, and some people might think that's corny, man, but I think, hey, man, these guys are going for a different sort of approach to it. They're at a secret base, formerly SB Nation, and I respect that, man. You guys have done an amazing job with this documentary so far, and I can't wait to see the last few parts. So until next Sunday, once again, like I said, ADB TV signing off one more again. Love and appreciate y'all. Peace.